Today's episode was recorded in New York City on March 17th, 2025. Please be sure to check out our other episodes, including one with rapper Denzel Curry on the topic of Japanese anime culture. Don't forget to click subscribe, and please rate the show on your favorite podcast platform.
It takes us to a place where we are in nature, and it has the volatile molecules that are released when you burn it or when you distill it into an essential oil are a lot of terpenes, which are found in a lot of different types of plants. But they have a very calming and relaxing, effect on people.
Palo Santo to clear my head. All alone and I'm in my bed. At the blue, then I got your text. You said, hey, mommy, that was good. Been a while, heard you in the ends. Devil emoji, and then he said, all alone and you're in your bed. I should be over there instead.
Welcome to Sing for Science, the show where musicians and scientists talk about music and science. I'm your host, Matt White. Each week, we'll talk about a song by our guest artist and how it connects with our guest scientist's area of expertise. Today, we'll be speaking with Grammy-nominated Canadian singer-songwriter Jessie Reyez. Jessie's latest album, Paid in Memories, features an ode to the South American incense Palo Santo, which translates to holy wood in Spanish. Palo Santo is burned in a wide variety of applications, including sacred rituals, and often is companion to meditation and yoga. Also joining us is cognitive psychologist and scent scientist Dr. Pamela Dalton. Dr. Dalton is a researcher at the Monell Chemical Senses Center in Philadelphia, where she studies how our emotions and brain processes modify how we perceive different smells. Pam is considered an authority on all things olfactory, and as such, we've invited her today to help us gain a deeper understanding of Jessie's lyric, Palo Santo Clears My Head. The title of this week's episode on the podcast is Palo Santo, the Science of Smell-Induced Relaxation. Hello, Jessie and Pam.
Hola.
Thank you for coming.
Pleasure.
So we're here to talk about all things Palo Santo. So maybe I start by just asking you to tell me everything about your relationship to it.
It's usually in tandem with sage, and I love doing it either before a bath, just to clear the space. I'll do sage first, and then some Palo Santo, and then drop some peppermint drops in the tub.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some lavender if I'm feeling fancy.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, oh my God, it really helps me settle in. I do it in the house too, especially when new people are in my space. And especially when new people are in my space or where they leave my space, to make sure it's back to baseline. My mom's done it my whole life. In Colombia, we call it saumerio, the process of doing it, the ritual of doing it.
That's the smudging?
Yeah,
okay.
That's the smudging, saumerio.
And she would use Palo Santo.
She would use sage, or she would use incense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she would use sage and incense, and then I introduced more Palo Santo to my process when I became an adult.
So had you moved to Canada by that point?
I was actually born in Toronto.
Okay.
Born in Toronto, Canada. My family's from Colombia, so my mom used to do the salmerio back home, and then also does it back in her home in Colombia, and also does it in Canada. She does it before shows too, because my folks, they come on tour with me.
Oh, cool.
It gets lit, and my mom knows how nervous I am sometimes, and especially when it's a lot of people, when you're on tour with other artists, and then their whole team is just a lot, and also all those people in one room, it's a whole lot of energy. She helps me a lot, because she'll go on stage prior to the show and do the sage and then Palo Santo and the stage. She's done it. She does it before shows for me. Mm. She'll also do it before we go on stage. Sometimes she'll smudge me or some of the band members on my squad. But once, I have this great memory of this one show in Toronto where she damn, did she do it on stage that time? She went on stage when the show was done before I did the encore, and ran up and down the stage, giving people blessings and stuff. It was really lit. So she usually does it before the show, but that one particular one, she did it during.
Did people go nuts?
Yeah.
Like, who is this woman?
Who is this? Yeah, because all they saw was this little like white globe, because the lights weren't even on, so you just see this white globe like running across the stage, and then the lights came on, and then you just see her like giving blessings throughout the whole.
Oh, you should absolutely keep that.
I love that, right?
That's part of
I don't
the
know
show.
where she got the gold, because she's not the kind to like hop on. I've tried to get her on stage before, and she's usually reluctant. But she I don't know what came over her, man. The Holy Ghost caught her, because she shot out there. That day, my dad also popped out during my last song, and he crowd surfed.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it was so sick. So sick. It was great.
I didn't know you had that kind of crowd.
I used to crowd surf all the time.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, and then I got injured really bad, and I never did it again.
Because you got dropped?
No, hell no, I didn't get dropped.
Yeah.
If anything, security. I was at a festival, and usually security get the brief of how rowdy the show's gonna be and whether or not you're gonna crowd surf. And I guess they hadn't gotten the brief, or I hadn't told my team I was gonna. Because at a festival, sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. At that time in my life, and I jumped off stage. I ran down the middle walkway, went over to. I should have known, because I got so many omens that day that something was gonna go left, but I didn't listen. But anyways, went down to the barrier, hopped on, and security was kind of looking nervous. Like the festival, so they don't know me from a hole in the wall, so they don't know that I'm like, oh, I do this. This is regular for me. But I get on, and the guy freaked out. Poor guy, he was just nervous. Maybe it was his first day. I don't know. But so I hop on, and he gets nervous, and he grabs my feet like this. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, let me go, bro. He's not listening. I'm like, let me go. He can't hear me so many people. I'm like, let me go, bro. He's like, okay. Yeah. And he let me go. And I'm like, whatever, popping off. And then I go to jump on, like, out into the crowd. And when I jump, he went to grab my feet.
Oh, no.
Which is, he did that. And then something jerked weird. And I ended up getting a herniated disc.
Oof.
Yeah, I was fucked. But I'm here today, healthier today.
Okay, good.
Learned my lesson. My mom begs me not to crowd.
Yeah, we're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah, so I don't. All that to say, I love Palo Santo.
Well, so maybe could you describe, so is it relaxation? Because so we're talking about it in two different applications. There's one that's kind of like, that I more associate with sage, it's like learning to, yeah. And that's like a little bit more ritualistic. And then there's just also the experience that you feel like when you relax, like you're in the bath. So what's that feel like?
That goes in tandem with me, because the bath feels like the bath is essentially a ritual. Yeah.
Yeah.
What does it feel like?
Yeah. You smell it.
It feels like I was able to carve out a little space in time where I'm not perturbed by like outside influences, and I'm just like safe. Safe in the moment. That's what it feels like.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this is something interesting, because when you and I first chatted, Pam, we're talking about the impact of initial smell memories. Because, Jessie, you know how like when you smell something that you haven't smelled since childhood, it has an effect that is so much more powerful than like just say a song that you haven't heard since childhood. It's just like transports you back to that moment. So I wonder if like your mom having burned Palo Santo and the associated memory of that is also part of the package.
Yeah, it brings me back to the womb somehow.
Those early experiences.
Absolutely. No question about that. I mean, some of those early scent memories are the most powerful. And it helps if we don't experience them every day, because they retain some of that power to take us back and to make us feel emotionally like we are in a safe place. For sure.
Okay. Was there a single incident that inspired this song? I mean, because I know it's also kind of a love song, right?
Yeah. Single man that inspired it.
Okay.
Single memory.
Were you like, I'm going to write a song about Palo Santo?
No, it never works that way. I mean, for me, and I don't really like aiming that way. I kind of just open and whatever comes, as opposed to aiming with a topic. It just kind of came. I was just talking about my life at the time and about the fuckery that was going on my phone. And it popped out.
Well, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's also selfishly incredible opportunity for the show, because I've always wanted to talk with a smell scientist.
Nice. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So from a smell scientist point of view, what are some of the standout features of the Holy Wood?
Well, it's It's a natural smell. It's a botanical. It's something that we might experience if we're walking in, in an arid forest where the tree is grown and there are, it's not just the wood that gives off the aroma. There are leaves and there are fruit as well. So my understanding is they try to be very responsible in terms of collecting it and not cutting down living trees, but only to collect the dried wood that falls after the tree is on, dead or on the ground. So, but it takes us to a place where we are in nature, and it has the volatile molecules that are released when you burn it or when you distill it into an essential oil are a lot of terpenes, which are found in a lot of different types of plants, but they have a very calming and relaxing, effect on people, and even animals in studies that they've shown.
Oh, no way.
That there are smooth muscle effects, vasorelaxation, a lot of different effects that if we test in an animal model, we can take away the expectation that people have when they use an essential oil. But we find that there are some absolutely clear effects of some of these essential oils that come from plants, like the trees and the leaves of the trees. So,
what's a terpene?
Terpene, it's a chemical. It's found in, if I said turpentine to you, you would know what I was talking about, right? I mean, you used to use it.
Yeah, but I don't associate it with Palo Santo.
No, but it is part of the family, right? It is. Terpenes are found in pine trees and, a lot of eucalyptus trees, things like that, that all have, the Japanese cedar that comes hinoki, has terpenes in it. There's also limonene in there, which is limonene is a citrus, and that's sort of the top note that you get when you burn.
It's a scent.
Yes. That's the top note of the scent that you get when you burn it, and then you get the more, the more terpene undernote with it. So it's complex, but it's actually very, very pleasant for most people.
Cool. The top note of the scent is such an interesting way to put it. Like a chord of the scent makes
exactly. That's how perfumers talk. I'm not a perfumer, but that's how they talk. Is that there's a top note, a middle note, and a base note. That the top note usually is one that's much more volatile and will leave, like if you're applying it, you'll smell it and then it will leave you for a while. Whereas the other notes, because of the physical nature of the molecule, they'll hang around for longer.
Well, like patchouli, it's like that chord is just strumming the whole time.
Yes, it
never goes away if you put it on.
Yeah, exactly.
You said vasorelaxation?
Yes, yeah. So a lot of, our muscles and the cardiac system respond to chemicals in terms of how the muscles relax. And that's some of the things that people have looked at in terms of essential oils, and particularly ones like the terpenes, alpha terpene that's found in Palo Santo, and also a few other kinds of woody resins. Yeah. So
cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't have a lot of really well-controlled research in this area, but what's there shows that there are effects of these compounds, and it goes beyond just, I like the way it smells, or it makes it feel safe to me.
Cool.
Of course, that also helps if you have a positive association to it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like, it's just your sense taking something in. If you watch a scary movie, you're going to get scared. If you smell a good smell, you smell
Exactly so. Yeah.
Cool.
And so, because that was my other question, is just like smells are really subjective, and what one might do it for one person, it won't for the other. But if you're saying that animals respond to that, that kind of takes out the possibility of any sort of like placebo effect or influence of like, I listened to Jessie's song and I'm like, oh, it really does this for her, and so it's going to really relax me too. But like with a mouse, obviously that's not
right. Even if you played the song, they wouldn't get that expectation from it. But the reality is that expectation still has an effect. So just like with drugs, believing that a drug will help you is going to enhance its effect. And having a positive association to an essential oil or an aroma independent of any pharmacological effects it might have, is still going to boost its effectiveness in you.
Yeah.
And similarly, if maybe you had a really bad association with it, it's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fortunately, that's not the case for you.
Yeah.
But, it might be for someone. You could imagine a situation where somebody might have been, very scared, and that was the dominant aroma in the background, and that would become associated with it. So.
Can you give us an overview of just how we smell? I mean, I know you have that handy diagram right there.
Yeah. Okay. So I brought my little diagram. I call her Norma because she's a normal nose.
Okay.
And I'll share it with you. But I'll talk about it as well. So we only smell what molecules can become carried in air, right?
Okay.
If they're stuck on this table, we're not going to get them.
Okay.
So when they're airborne and we're breathing, we're likely smelling if we have a normal sense of smell. And so the molecules enter into the nose. And then because our sniffing, especially if we like something, we'll start sniffing the same way animals do. Like,
Yeah.
what is that? Or take a big, deep breath. And these bony protuberances here are called turbinates. And that provides this turbulence that gets the molecules up to this tiny space at the top of our nose, which is where the odor receptors are. We don't have odor receptors down here. We have to get the molecules all the way up here in order for them to bind to those odor receptors. And that starts the process of smelling. So it starts in the nose, but what really we smell with is our brain, right? I mean, we need the brain to make sense of what we're smelling. And so when these receptors are bound to a molecule, they fire, and they have an axon that goes through this. This is a bony plate here called the cribriform plate. It has little holes in it. And these little receptors send their axons through to this structure that we see here called the olfactory bulb. And that's where we first start to code what we're smelling. These are just sort of, they're agnostic. You're a receptor that responds to this chemical, and you respond to a lot of chemicals, and that molecule responds can bind to many receptors. So it's a combination of that, and then this is where the code gets started to be read. Now, what's interesting about the bulb is this directly projects to structures in our brain that are part of our emotional system, the limbic system. And that's probably why when we smell something, it's almost before we recognize what we're smelling, we'll have an emotional response to it. And so it has direct projections to things like the amygdala, and that's where we code, emotional arousal, or the hippocampus, which is where we store memories. And so that direct projection is what allows us to have that strong emotional response to a lot of odors that we don't have with other kinds of sensory stimuli.
So that's what's so singular about it, is it's the only sense that's connected to the emotional part of our brain?
Yes, without any relays in between. It's directly projecting to that, yes. And then, of course, that message goes to other parts of the brain, the olfactory cortex, and then it combines in the orbitofrontal cortex with other information like, smell and taste are very tightly entwined. But these when this receptors are stimulated, they're completely independent. It's not until they get into the brain that we then recognize that, something that smells sweet like vanilla is because it's been paired with a lot of sweet foods over time. So there's a lot of computation that goes on beyond that. But this is the first way that we respond to an olfactory experience, is almost emotion before we get recognition, before we can identify what we're smelling.
That's wild.
It's pretty cool, right?
It's wild.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
It sounds actually wild because, is that we're evidence of our evolutionary connection to animals? Because for animals, scent is so powerful.
The olfactory system is the earliest way that we became able to detect information from a distance, right? If you need to touch something, or taste something, those are chemicals, but odors would transmit through air, or in the case of a baby, a fetus, through the amniotic fluid, which is how you may have even been exposed to some of the scents of your mother's world and her culture even before you were born.
Wait, say that again? So the fetus is smelling what the mother is smelling?
The olfactory system is largely mature in the third trimester of pregnancy. And so at that point in time, things that mom eats or things that she wears, like a perfume or, inhales, have the ability to permeate into the amniotic fluid and stimulate those olfactory receptors of the fetus. Even though it's an aqueous medium, it's water, it's not, it's not air. But that's how we think that you're learning about the culture in which you're going to be born into before you're born.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because how was your mother? So you grew up you were young in the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. And that's in Toronto.
In Toronto.
Because it's not like there was a yoga studio on every block in the 90s where you could pick up some Palo Santo. So did your mom have like some racket to get it up from South America?
Yeah, it's all associated in one. And in church, like my family, I grew up religious. Mm-hmm. Now they're much more spiritual. They're less dogmatic. Mm-hmm. But back then we'd go every Sunday, and there's a lot of incense at church. And then when I recall it, like incense, Palo Santo, and sage all live in the same space, similar space for me. Yeah.
What was the denomination of the church?
Catholic.
It was Catholic. And was it Spanish speaking?
Spanish speaking Catholic. Yeah. So it's a little different because like the way that Catholicism is expressed and experienced in Colombia and in South America is a little different than how it is in North America, because there's a lot of indigenous customs and indigenous beliefs that get mixed in, so it's a little muddy. There's a few different things and a few different customs that they don't do in Canada.
Can you think of any of the customs? I'm curious. Of the where they've kind of merged with indigenous culture.
Yeah, for example, like altars at home.
Oh, okay.
Like for example, something like that's not really a norm for at least that I've been exposed to for Catholicism in Canada. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So.
Or like going to or almost like, I don't know how to say this in English. Como digo eso, lo que hace mi mamá, lo que dicen ellos le dicen Reiki.
Reiki?
But it's not Reiki. That's not what we call it. Yeah. But we call it something else. Sanación, which is pretty much Reiki, but we call it something else.
Okay, so like an energy work.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, but that was really connected to Catholic.
That's not. No, that's one of the things that I'm like, that's not really Catholic that I came to learn. Yeah, in Canada, I'm like, that's not a thing over here, but that's a thing in Colombia.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't wait to smell what that smells like.
This Palo Santo?
Because all Palo Santos are not created equal.
Should we rip
Yeah,
her?
please.
Should we let her rip? Yeah, all Palo Santos are definitely not created equal.
This is good education for me because I never know how long to let it flame before I blow it out.
Mm-hmm. I just ballpark it. I wouldn't call myself an expert or anything.
All right. Oh, yeah. See, I live upstate and everything has to kind of come shipped. And so I really have no sense of what I'm getting.
Yeah, let me read later for you.
But that's top shelf.
That's top shelf?
Yeah.
Some Belvedere shit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, now it's coming through.
Yeah.
Once you get this. Nice.
Once you get the turbines? Turbines?
Yeah.
Okay.
The turbine of the terpene.
The turbines, yes. Yeah.
Watching you smell, I was like watching carefully to see how you experience, because there's got to be like a clinical
assessment.
Yeah, exactly.
I think everybody brings, when I train people to do studies, everyone has their own way of smelling and sniffing, and you can't really alter that without altering it's part of their sort of hardwired behavior.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. If you have them sniff according to a metronome,
Mm-hmm.
they don't experience it the way that they normally would, and they're like, I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it. I'm like, all right, just do whatever you need to do to smell it. Yeah.
Wow. I've never thought about sniffing to a metronome.
Yeah, that's
Thing.
Yeah.
who thought of that?
Well, if you're doing a study where you need to control how much somebody is smelling, you want them to smell precisely when the stimulus comes out of, right?
Okay.
So,
So, like, the
that's
peak.
kind of, the peak. So,
Yeah.
we try to control our studies,
Okay.
but sometimes we're trying to control behavior that really can't be controlled because it's so individual, right?
Because
Okay.
it's so individual. That's so any moment where the body is experiencing something that the body reacts to before the mind, I think is always like mind blowing. Like,
Yes.
that always blows my mind where it takes over
Yeah.
and it knows more than you know.
Right.
That shit's
Right.
wild.
What you mentioned the hippocampus, and the first episode I did was with a neuroscientist who talked about the hippocampus, and there was this famous quote, like a William James quote, that was something about, if we see a bear, I'm going to butcher this, but I'll give it a shot. Do we feel fear because of the bear, or do we feel fear because we run? So, to your point, something in our body sees that bear and starts running, and then the brain was like, oh shit, we're running, something's wrong.
That's right.
Whereas like
Right.
so something happens before your eyes see the bear, right?
Right.
And so the smell gets wired into that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like you can give somebody a shot of adrenaline without their being aware of it. That's going to make them anxious, but they're going to associate that fear, that they're going to take that feeling and try to understand it in terms of what's going on around them, right? So that's when they feel fear, right? It's a physiological arousal, but they have to interpret it, right? And that comes later.
Yes.
That's cognition. That's the cortex that does that kind of
Okay.
calculation, if you were. Yeah.
And because when we talk about this being so wired into the emotional system, and the first thing I thought of, my first favorite band as a kid was In Excess. Are you an In Excess fan? In Excess was like a huge Australian 80s band.
What's their main song? Can you hum it out for
Need
me?
You Tonight.
How's it go?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
'Cause
a
I'm
pretty
not
catchy. Yeah.
thinking,
Because I'm not what?
there's something about you, girl, that makes me sweat. Or Never Tear Us Apart.
How's that go?
Don't ask me what you know is true. Don't have to tell me. All these videos were like shot in Prague. I mean, this guy was like a true heartthrob. And there's this heartbreaking documentary about him.
Okay.
So he killed himself in the late 90s. And I guess he was just like, he was a real foodie. He loved to eat. He loved to cook. And there was this kind of freak incident where he was assaulted, hit his head, and lost his sense of smell and taste.
No shit.
Became a completely different person, depressed, erratic, violent, and he killed himself. And, so I can't help but wonder if like that was, and I think in this documentary, they suggest that the reason why Michael Hutchence like ended up going down that spiral was because he lost his sense of smell. And so Pam, you told me that this is more common than.
Depression is very common when people lose their sense of smell, and we're seeing a lot of it since COVID, because even though many people that lost their smell with COVID regained it, probably 10% didn't, and we're talking about millions of people that may be at risk for depression or some kinds of neurodegenerative problems in the future. And the reason we think that is, to talk about Michael, yes, he was very much into the cuisine and food and cooking, and that could have explained depression. Like you've lost something that was very important to you, a life's pleasure. But it also could be that because the olfactory system is no longer stimulating that emotional center of the brain, that somehow things are getting atrophied, right?
Yeah.
And that you're disrupting how we process emotion. So it may be more organic than just simply psychological in terms of the way that happened. And, we'll find out.
And so are there efforts to replace this? I mean, like, is there a hearing aid equivalent for someone who's like lost their sense of smell?
There are some treatments that are being used right now. I mean, one treatment that is low risk is just what's called olfactory retraining, to take a set of odorants like this, maybe out of your spice cabinet, maybe out of your bathroom where you have gels and shampoos and fragrances, and just try to smell them and try to remember what you were smelling when you could smell it, right? To try to make those connections.
Oh, okay.
But there may be damage to the system that is not repairable in that way. And it seems to help the most with people who are starting to recover their sense of smell but may have distortions. Olfactory training doesn't work for everyone. And unfortunately, we just don't know who it's going to work for and who it won't. Probably within 8 weeks, you will know whether it's going to work for you or not. But you do have to try it. But there are some other treatments, but there's no magic bullet right now.
Yeah.
And we think that there might be. I mean, there may be a way of stimulating the part of if what's damaged is what we call the periphery, the receptors or this, but if you can still stimulate the part of the brain that should experience smell with a signal, maybe something implanted, the same way they do cochlear implants, then you might be able to restore the sense of smell for some people. Wow, it's surprising. I hope no one loses it, because from what I understand is that you just do not recognize how devastating it is and how disoriented you feel in your environment when you can no longer smell.
Yeah, crazy. It's such an abstract thing to think of a smell. It's like I'd like doing it sometimes, like to hear a song in silence.
Right.
It's equivalent, Right.
Yeah.
Do you ever... there are some people that experience some forms of synesthesia where one sensory input triggers another. I mean, when you hear music, does it ever make you think of a smell? Do you sometimes hear a lyric or listen to a note or a chord and get a sense of, something else going on besides just hearing?
It's happened to me. The first time I experienced it, it wasn't natural. It was psilocybin.
Okay.
It was the first time I'll never forget. I was in the studio with it was Belly. Remember those two producers that I was working with, Belly and his two guys? Well, anyways, we were in LA, and I never do it in the studio. I used to drink. I don't drink anymore, but that was my vehicle of choice. But I decided to try psilocybin in the studio, and I shut my eyes. And it was so wild to just see the EQ in front of me and watch it dance. And I was like, yo, this is new. And then what's so cool is that it taught, I don't know if this is normal, but it taught me how to do it to the point that after that, now sober, I can access that part of my brain where I could shut it and see it, because it showed me the way. It's so interesting. But it's happened only so far visually. I haven't experienced it with odor and music. Sorry? Oh, that's right. I wrote a song called Synesthesia. Yeah, how the hell does that chorus go again? Help! Yeah, your love tastes like music to my ears.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's not coming out. Not right now.
Okay,
maybe it'll come
but it
out
exists.
Later. It exists, yeah, synesthesia. I forgot about that. Nice.
Have you heard about the stoned ape theory?
Yes.
Okay.
Valid.
Yeah. Well, so the Paul Stamets, who's the big mushroom guy, he's very careful to point out it's a hypothesis, because you're never going to be able to prove this. But perhaps the missing link, like why our primate ancestors were able to develop this incredibly complex language system, could be attributed to psilocybin. Because it, first of all, I can't remember like what level of development in our evolution, like if we're talking about Neanderthals or what, but like, they would travel in bands following, not rock bands, but in groups following cattle or whatever, and that's where mushrooms usually grow up out of cow dung, And so they would eat the mushrooms, have these intense psychedelic experiences that would produce synesthesia. And it's that interweaving of senses that could have created this really complex language system.
Yeah.
If you need another verse for that song, like throw that in there.
Great idea, yeah. Double down his education. Love it.
Yeah. One more thing. Good you don't drink. And I was going to mention this anyway when we're talking about hearing impairment. Your fellow Canadian, Mac DeMarco, was on the show, and he talked with a guy who was talking about sound. And they did a study on musicians. They were tracking hearing loss in music groups, people who all played together but used different substances. And the people that drank while they performed had far more profound levels of hearing loss than people who smoked weed or did psychedelics or even harder drugs. And the reason why is because apparently he told me there's the smallest muscle in our body. It's called the stapedius muscle. It's in your ear, and it acts like a limiter or compressor, so that if your body senses something really loud and damaging coming, like a really high feedback frequency, it closes the window so it can't get in. But it's a muscle, so like any other, it's slowed down from drinking.
Crazy.
So it reacts slowly, and the bad frequencies get in.
Crazy.
So you're a step ahead.
Amen.
Mushrooms over booze.
Shout out to mushrooms over booze. I was a bartender for a few years and a bottle service girl, so my damage came, but
Yeah.
at least it won't come anymore. Yeah.
With the club music too, I bet.
Yeah.
It can be cumulative. It's good to cut it off.
Let's talk about this little grab bag of smells we have here.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned sage, so I brought some. It's not liquid. It's just these little pearls that have been impregnated with the scent, so you can pass those around. So I brought.
Interesting.
Does it smell like sage to you?
It smells like a clean sage.
Chemical sage.
Because probably it is. This comes from an essential oil, but you won't have the combustion byproducts when you burn the sage itself, right? So that's why it's a cleaner sage.
Oh, wow.
It's been extracted from the wood itself rather than burning it. So
it's like scratch and sniff sage.
Yes.
Did you have scratch and sniff stickers growing up?
Yeah, scratch and sniff and the
and this
markers.
is one that everyone thinks of as being relaxing, but isn't necessarily for everybody. But if you don't like it, oh no, I mean it's not everybody likes pure lavender.
Yeah,
because when we talk about lavender scent in products, it's usually mixed with something that makes it a little bit sweeter. This is doesn't have that vanilla note to it. This is just pure lavender.
Yeah.
I love it. Like we'll go on walks with my family and pass by some lavender and just go ham.
It's just wonderful. And this is the Japanese wood, the Japanese cypress that has some of the same relaxing effects called hinoki. that are attributed to
Palo Santo.
Yeah.
Oh.
That one's not for me.
Yeah, there's something else going on there too.
Now, see, that might be something that you would have to get, some experience with before you would find it and embrace it as being, something truly relaxing.
Because it's foreign.
Exactly. And actually that's why I have this, is I was trying to establish associations in a study to see how stress and relaxation could become associated with odors. And I needed something that was very foreign to a Western audience. So that's it. That's hinoki.
It is.
Yeah. And so this is interesting because this probably is closest to, it's in the same family, frankincense.
Oh, yeah.
Not a wood, but it's a resin from a particular tree. And it's in the same family as the Palo Santo.
I had a brief stint as an essential oil distributor. I mean, it was more of like some kind of pyramid scheme that I got into. But frankincense was always the most expensive. Why?
Well, I mean, they essentially damage the tree, and then the resin scabs it over, and that's how. So very little of is collected. It's it's like rose oil, pure rose oil. You have to like have a room this size of rose petals to extract rose oil from it.
That smells great.
Yeah.
This smells kind of eucalyptus-y to me. This frankincense.
Speaking of eucalyptus.
I love eucalyptus too.
Yeah. But see, that's more energizing to me. I don't know how it feels to you.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
It's got this, it's not just an odor, it's not just smell, it's trigeminal, which is different receptors in our nose. It's the same way we experience chili peppers or anything like that. It's the same system. And so it's independent of smell, but it's combined in a lot of odors when you get to a certain concentration.
Where it's got a burn to it?
It's this would be sort of like a cooling sensation, right? Like menthol, eucalyptus.
But why is it the same as chili peppers?
Because it's the same system. It's the same trigeminal nerve, cranial nerve number 5 that goes to the brain and gives us the sensation. Now, depending on what receptor is on, so there's a capsaicin receptor that actually is the heat and the burning sensation. This is another receptor. We call it the menthol receptor that is stimulated by eucalyptus. But it's the same cranial nerve that sends that information to the brain. It's just this is hot, this is cold, that sort of thing. And so this is also in Palo Santo. This is the chemical called limonene that you can smell. And that's the top note of a citrusy scent that you get out of the Palo Santo and a lot of others.
So are these, you may have said this already, but are these produced synthetically, or is this the actual essential oil that you've...
Some of these are essential oils, yes.
Oh, wow. That is very lemon forward.
Mm-hmm.
Eucalyptus presents cold, or you receive it cold. What is received hot?
I don't know of too many that we would smell that would be received hot other than the capsaicin, anything with capsaicin in it, which is chili peppers. Okay. Yes, yeah. Most of the time, the volatile is, capsaicin isn't very volatile until you cook it. Right, and then if you're frying chili peppers, then yes, your eyes will start to tear and your nose will burn, kind of thing. But there aren't a lot of warming. Amber has a little bit of a warming quality to it if you think of it, right? When you smell it, and I'm not exactly sure. It probably doesn't hit the capsaicin receptor, but it does have a warming quality to it. But yes, a lot of, your menthols, your menthol furfurin, those are part of a lot of them are in botanicals. So, if you walk into, like in Northern California, you can walk through forests of eucalyptus trees, and it's just like, like every breath you take makes you feel like you're breathing more air in. You're really not. You're just tricking your brain into thinking you're getting more air because the way it stimulates the cool receptors, it makes you have a greater sensation of airflow in your nose. So that's why using menthol sprays sometimes makes you feel better when you have a cold and you're all stuffed up. It doesn't really decongest you, but it makes you feel better. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Are there basic building blocks of smells, like ingredients, like kind of like red, orange, yellow, green, is it just like this? Is there a smell rainbow? I mean, I'm sure it's very complex.
It is complex. And that's part of the problem with trying to, like, for example, if you release this song and I'm playing it on my, MP3 or wherever, wouldn't it be so cool to have the aroma of Palo Santo come through at the same time, have it be embedded somehow in the track and, stimulate that aroma so that I could get that whiff of it while you were singing that. That would be so cool. we're a little far away from that. I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't put it into a little pouch, but if you want to do this commercially, you want to be able to present thousands of different aromas to someone. And that's where the field is going, is trying to figure out how many building blocks do you need? How many alphabet, aromas do you need so that you can create every scent that you might want to in a small container, something like that. So
that's digitizing smell.
That would be digitizing smell, yes.
But I read about this recently. It's happening, isn't it?
It's happening. There's a lot of work being done, but it's not quite there yet because we really don't. I mean, we're trying to mimic the biology of the human sense of smell and how we smell just by stimulating 10 receptors with, 5 different molecules, and then it gives us the smell of, let's say, oregano. And, at that point, we have to figure out, and my colleagues are working very hard on this, how many of those building blocks do you need to be able to create a sort of a repertoire, a palette of 1,000 odors.
So how many? What's the answer? Like ballpark? How many building blocks?
It's probably not going to be hundreds because that would be not very feasible, right? I mean, if you could get it down to something like a couple dozen, I think that would be reasonable to do.
Those are the building blocks or the?
Yeah, no, those are the individual molecules that would be able to be combined into chords as you would in music and in fragrance to stimulate, and then you would be able to smell sage.
Well, that's less than I would have thought. I mean, I thought it'd be.
But the results are so great. Like there's only 12 notes, and then you can go
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, and then there's always the possibility of just doing a direct to brain stimulation, right? At some point, which would be very cool.
Yeah.
So,
well, are there any other topics that we should hit? Any other questions that you have for one another?
No. That I can think of. I got.
Do you cook?
Cook checks.
But you eat.
A lot of Uber Eats. Uber Eats has me by the neck.
For sure.
I'm sure. It's a hectic lifestyle. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But what are some of the things that like flavors, fragrance, aromas from your family's cooking that really turn you on? That like I love oregano. Think of your grandmother, your mother, that sort of thing.
Oregano, cilantro.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and cilantro is not for everybody, right?
I know, isn't that wild? The way that it's received.
And I love it so much. And yet I can get why people say I get the soapiness, but I don't. But I love it.
Yeah.
So
so good. Cumin, as well, which is a taste smell. Does that like?
It's both. Yeah.
Okay.
Cumin is probably one of the most widely used spices across the world.
It's so unique.
It really is.
Are there instances where people don't like the smell of an ingredient but like the taste of it, or vice versa?
Yeah, like I can think of durian, durian fruit, right?
What is it?
Durian fruit, it's that Asian fruit that smells like...
Oh, right, foot. Smells like feet.
Oh, yeah.
Really, really bad feet, right?
Yeah.
But when you put people who've grown up with it, putting it in your mouth and eating it is a different sensation than the aroma. And I know people who won't drink coffee but love the smell of it, right? Because it's bitter, right? And yes, but they love the aroma. So you can divorce the two.
I love the smell of a pipe, but when I tried to smoke it, it was hell.
Right. Yeah. I enjoy certain tobacco smells as well. But I don't enjoy smoking.
Yeah.
So, yes. Yeah.
Well, so we just talked about feet. I need to know, we got to talk about this stink bomb, if that's okay.
What is the stink bomb?
Pam was contracted by the U.S. Department of Defense to develop a non-lethal weapon. Stop me.
It's true. No.
Stop me if this is confidential as I'm halfway through
I
it.
asked her if she brought a sample. She said, I can't travel with it. So I got...
Thank God.
Yes, I would not do that. I told them I was only going pleasant odors.
What's the story here?
Well, the story is that responses to odors at a certain concentration, as long as they're not irritating or they rise above a certain concentration, are really a psychological response. Yeah. The same way as when they would show you a picture of something unpleasant or a really loud noise that wouldn't damage your hearing, but would make you just want to leave an area. Mm-hmm. And so they were looking for a way to keep people out of certain areas or dispel a crowd. Mm-hmm. Or at least dispel the least motivated people out of the crowd, right? And by releasing a bad odor, the idea would be that you would have people leave the area, or they would not go into an area if somehow their presence triggered, a spray of this odor. Mm-hmm. So we had set out to see if there could be improvement. There was an odor that had been developed during, I guess it was the Second World War, called humi, that at some point was used by the French resistance against the Germans. Mm-hmm. And it really smelled like, well, you can imagine humi, it smelled like flatulence, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's not like maybe people would run screaming away from it, but it was more of an embarrassment, right? Yeah. The idea was it would get sprayed on, German officers and, and like embarrass them. Yeah. Again, probably somewhat apocryphal, but at any rate. So we were trying to find a way to find an odor that was universally malodorous and unpleasant, but was not an irritant, because if it was an irritant, that would put it into the category of a riot control agent. Mm-hmm. And we cannot use those outside of domestic borders. Mm-hmm. We can use them here in New York City. We can't use them in, anywhere else. Okay. So that was the idea. And so we tested a lot of people from different cultures and different backgrounds. And we reasoned it had to be something of biological origin, because otherwise, what would everybody know? Right?
Be no association.
Exactly.
Funny. Wow.
So we had a really, really, really bad feces odor.
Yeah.
My favorite.
Yeah.
We had body odor, like butyric acid foot odor. We had like a rotting garbage odor. We even had I used to collect hair from my hairdresser and burn it, capture the molecules to get that burned, it wasn't really burnt flesh, but it smelled similar.
How do you capture them? So in that one instance, how do you capture the molecules?
So you could heat it, or you could pass steam through it, and then you would the aroma molecules would become volatile, become airborne, and then you would pass them through like a cold trap where they would condense out, and then you would be able to separate the aroma molecules from, let's say, the steam.
And so what, you look at a microscope and you say, okay, there's water and there's the other thing.
Yeah, it's not even a microscope. It's just a physical extraction. Yeah, like steam distillation or heating to get things out that way. So, and that's how they get a lot of these essential oils. Okay. A lot of it is done with steam rather than heat, because you don't damage the molecules and the original material. So you steam it, the steam carries the aroma molecules, then it goes into an area where it gets cold, it condenses, and usually the essential oils are not miscible in water, so they'll sit on top of the water, so you can just scoop them out and extract them that way. So.
You're being humble. I'm sure it's not quite so simple.
It is pretty simple.
Well, I'll say this. You, as Defense Department scientists go, you must have a comparatively clear conscience.
I certainly do. I mean, I was just trying to keep people out of dangerous areas or, disperse crowds in a safe way. Yeah. And was able to argue that this was a psychological response. It wasn't harming anyone. Yeah. Because, things like tear gas can be harmful, and other riot control agents for people with respiratory problems can be a problem. This would just be something that you would go like, and number one, if you didn't know what it was, and you just smell this really bad odor, you'd be suspicious anyway. Okay. So, and you'd hightail it out of there. That was the idea. Don't ask me. I have no idea if it's ever been used.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm just going to erase. Can I burn this?
Yeah, go nuts.
If it's, I'm just going to erase whatever memory of all the smells you just described.
Yes.
So we can end on this note.
That's a lovely idea.
So to speak.
I have a question before you do that.
Yeah.
I can't remember the scientist's name. I can't remember what book it was that I read it in. But it was the same scientists that were able to determine whether or not a couple was gonna divorce. Oh, Big Data. Maybe it was Everybody Lies. It was something about Big Data, and also, anyway, scientists that were able to determine whether or not a couple was gonna last, watching them interact for 10 minutes.
Oh.
And they were able to like deduce exactly what to look at, and they were able to like like something like 99% accuracy.
No kidding.
Yeah. And it was interesting too, because these same guys also, when they were doing the experiments to map out emotion on the face, but this is so cool. They were mapping out emotion, and then one of the scientists asked the other guy, he was like, do you feel sad or angrier when we're doing the sad ones? And they realized that it was just self-inducing, and and the fake it till you make it sentence.
It makes so much sense, right?
Yeah, so much so. And
exactly.
it's literally chemical. Like, you can smile in the mirror and you'll naturally make yourself feel better, because that's one of those instances where your body responds faster than your
very
true. Cognition.
Very, very true.
So I wonder if that's also if there's a parallel. When you were doing the smell test, is there any smells when you were doing that, like the one with the biological ones that you don't like? How was that process? Did you experience, like, I don't know how long it was, for weeks, and there was a certain point where you were like, I'm done with this?
Yeah.
Or you were just like over it?
Yeah. I actually, at a certain point, I became very desensitized, to the point where it was just like, okay, this is,
interesting.
I didn't. But now, because it's been a while since I worked with them, when I get a whiff, I'm very sensitive to it. I mean, I can smell it probably before anybody else, you know, like if there's a baby over here with a dirty diaper, you know, I'm like, you know? And, you know, I'm always with the sprays in the house, you know, because, you know, someone uses the bathroom and I'll be the first person like,
no way.
So it's made me sort of like a super smeller for certain bad smells, which is not great.
Having developed that.
Yeah.
My God. Well, God bless you. Yeah.
Yeah. Here you go. You can
do thank you. Yeah, all right.
I was curious.
We all need a whiff of
this.
That.
Well, that kind of, I mean, it makes you very well suited for your job.
Absolutely. Yes.
Or not.
No, I mean, you know, and one of the things we know, unfortunately, is that people do lose their sense of smell. That's so nice.
Yeah.
As they get older. And it's probably, you know, there's good and bad reasons for that, but I've been able to retain it, so I can still tell when I've left something uncorked in the lab. Let me say, you know, and you know, I'm safe.
That's comforting.
Yeah, it's very comforting. Yes, and my lab mates and people in the building appreciate it too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you're both the best. This has been fascinating.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you. And having the opportunity to hear your music and enjoy your company.
Thank you. Same. This is so interesting. I love learning about this. This is so interesting. Especially knowing when I was like 14, 15, this is funny. When I was 14, 15 and I had a rough breakup, I, at that point, realized the power of smell, and I was dropping off some books at my ex-boyfriend's house. And he had a new girlfriend that was a sweetheart. I loved her. She was so great. But I remember before I dropped the books off, I stuck one of the photos. I was a mess, but I stuck one of our old photos in the books. And then I grabbed my perfume and I was like, shh.
Oh, yeah.
And I sprayed that to hell. And then I remember dropping it off and she was fuming. And in my head, I was at 14. I was like, this smell's going to throw his ass back. It's going to be great. I feel like
absolutely it did. Yes, that was a very potent weapon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Merciless.
15.
Yeah.
Okay.
15.
Still.
Okay.
Still.
Okay.
Yeah. I've grown.
Or not.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was great. Can I take another whiff of this?
You can take them all with you.
Oh, sweet. What can I do with these? Like, do they dissolve?
I don't really know. They are made out of like rice powder, and they come from Japan because they use them to embed a lot of essential oils or fragrances in them. So, I mean, eventually they might dissolve. I've never tried to dissolve them, but you know, they're basically, you know, I think they're maybe like sort of a polysorbate, maybe a little bit of rice powder mixed in.
Cool. Do you have a preference for oils that you use for essential oils, like a brand that you feel like is particularly better than the rest in regards to like potency?
I really haven't explored that many apart, for my personal use. Mostly it's been in the lab, and what we look for there is mostly purity, right? If they've done GCMS, the ability to say this is only this, and it doesn't have a lot of contaminants in it, and that's basically what we look for. But yeah, I'm happy to pass along. I have some names. I can certainly pass them through.
As a former distributor for Young Living essential oils, I can
plugging it in.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Young Living was or may still be a corporate partner of Monell, and I have done some work with them. So.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Yes.
So one time so I used to be in a band, and one time I was driving the van, and it was around the same time that I had gotten into the essential oils, and everyone else was asleep, and we were driving through Idaho in the middle of nowhere. And there was a sign, and it said Young Living Essential Oil Farm, and I just freaked the fuck out. I woke up, I was like, this is it, it.
To be fair, they do a lot to source their material, and they know who's growing it, right? And it's all over the world. It's not just obviously it's in Idaho, but, it could be in Asia, it could be, in Europe, and they are very strict, and I know this from talking to their scientists in terms of understanding the source and doing that kind of analysis on their essential oils.
Wow.
So they're quite good in that.
How
respect.
cool that you worked with them.
Yeah.
Rocky Mountain, also not bad.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Have you tried them?
Yes, I have a couple of materials from Rocky Mountain.
They're myrrh. And they're, myrrh as in the Bible myrrh.
Yeah.
You put that, because I would put that in some water and throw it on sauna rocks.
Oh yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. What's peace for you?
Oh, for me is probably, I would say it's a molecule called geraniol.
Geraniol?
Geraniol, and it's a rose scent. I tend to go more with sort of the woody, resiny aromatics when I bathe, because I just because I think they lend themselves to the warm water and everything. But I do love geraniol. It's a little more uplifting. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you think of it, a geranium flower. That's what it's essentially extracted from.
Cool.
But it's a rose scent, but it's got that little bit of citrus as the top note, and that's really it just
does it for you.
Yeah,
nice.
it does it to me.
Good to know. Well, thank you. Thanks for the lesson.
Oh yes,
For the
it was
education.
fun. Thanks for bringing your good Palo Santo.
Be sure to check out Jessie's new album, Paid in Memories, and catch her on her summer world tour. For more information, please visit jessiereyez.com. Learn more about Pam's work by visiting the Monell Center's website, monell.org. The Monell Center is the only independent research institute in the world dedicated to the scientific understanding of taste and smell. Sing for Science is co-produced by Talkhouse and made possible in part by a grant from the Simons Foundation. Our music is by Panoram, social media manager is Bailey Constas, digital producer is Keenan Cush, and our location recording was produced at Melrose Podcasts in Manhattan's East Village. If you like Sing for Science, the best way you can support us is to give us a review, tell a friend about the show, and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. For more information, please visit singforscience.org and follow us on social media at Sing for Science. Thanks for listening.